welcome to our third JTeen webinar. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. If those of you that are new or have not been on before, let's remember that everyone on here is anonymous, and you're welcome to use the Q&A button, which will also be confidential. Only the panelists will be able to see your questions, and feel free to ask any questions that you would like. Apart from that, also let us know what might have worked well for you from the previous webinars. If you're on as a repeat, if you tried anything and you're happy with the way it worked, then let us know. Equally, if you felt something wasn't so helpful and didn't help you so much, use the Q&A button to tell us where you're at, how you're managing, how you're coping, what other help you would like. That's what we're here for. That's what the next hour is here for. Deborah, welcome. Thank you very much. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you, Yaakov. Under the circumstances, everything's okay. We're all good. It's all right. Thank you. Hectic time, but okay.
And you came from a wedding tonight.
I did, and every opportunity there is to celebrate a simcha. Some people have felt comfortable to push off their smachot, and this was a very moving, meaningful simcha to be able to attend, especially during this time.
Okay, lovely. Okay, and remember that part of what we're here for is we might not necessarily always be able to solve the situation, but it's also about the fact that we're all here on together, and we're sharing each other's difficulties and the challenges, and so really that's part of what the webinar is all about, to know that we have a safe place that we can come and we can ask things. And we're going to start off with a girl from Gibraltar. We've had one or two people from last week from Gibraltar struggling with sleep. I'm not sure what they're putting in the water, but it isn't an easy time to sleep. We can laugh, but ultimately, on a more serious note, it's a hard time to sleep because we might have different thoughts going on. And even if we're not necessarily seeing the difficult videos, but I think it's more the fact that we're just feeling a bit tense. We're not really certain about everything. How can we help, Deborah? We might have said a couple of things before. Maybe it's a matter of reviewing some of the ideas that we've mentioned before. How can we help our 11-year-old in Gibraltar to have a better night's sleep, because she's often thinking about the situation. She finds it hard to stop thinking about it.
Well, it makes perfect sense, as we've discussed throughout the last webinars that we've had together. And I think, first of all, we just to recap on some of the things that we've discussed, is the key is to come off our mobile phones as early as possible before going to sleep. So not 5 minutes before. If we can at least an hour before, even 2 hours before we want to go to sleep, getting off those screens and reviewing and reading, even though it's considered reading. We can say, oh no, I'm still reading on nice things. I'm just reading on my phone. But the Blu-ray that we get from our mobile phones plays a nice little sort of battle in our heads with reference to our innate secretion of melatonin that helps us go to sleep and settle and relax. And that is really stunted when we're sitting on a screen looking, even if we're just reading. So that's the first point of call. If we can get off those phones, very, very important. Now, I also think that even though watching television is a screen, yes, it's different to watching and reading on a phone. So sometimes we can put on a relaxing movie, even though we may not feel like watching something that doesn't seem so connected to what we're talking about, but it can be a good distraction and can take our mind off it. A comedy, something that makes us laugh, can be good. And also reading. reading a book that's completely distracted, not a school book, not something that we have to study or for any exams. I noticed that this person's in year 11, so they're quite coming up to some heavy exams, but something that's just light and, you know, distracting. And that also very much, when we're tired, helps us feel much more relaxed and helps us to fall asleep. Remember, we can't, it's very difficult when we're feeling anxious, and this is the next point that we have to be aware of, that we have a lot of physical symptoms. We've got a lot of cortisol, which is a hormone, a stress hormone that's running through our system, keeping us alert. And what we want to be doing is we want to understand that that takes time to reduce. Now, you did some great breathing exercises, Yaakov, towards the end of both webinars. I think we should definitely carry that on today. Breathing in, breathing out is a very, very relaxing thing to do. It just centers your body and makes you very mindful of where you are. And another technique that I absolutely love, as well as the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 that you did last week, was trying to find 10 things that are the color orange in the room around you. You might think, okay, that's a bit peculiar, but actually it's quite hard to find, even though we've got big J that's orange on the JTeen. It's actually quite hard to find things that are the color orange. And it's distracting once you get into it. And once you carry on, you actually want to find more things that are the color orange because it's calming. You can see all of these things are not getting upset that we can't fall asleep, not feeling, oh, this is enough, for goodness sake, it's got to stop, I've got to sleep. We're not doing anything like that, just to be very centered where you are. If you're finding it challenging that evening, not to fight it, but to try and take steps to mitigate it by doing some of these actions that we've just described.
You've got me really distracted now, Deborah. I keep looking around trying to find something orange, and honestly, apart from this behind me, I can't really see very many orange things.
It's hard. Yes, absolutely. You'll be amazed. Try it out this evening, Yaakov, while you're trying to fall asleep.
So you've definitely got us all going there. Yeah, I think, you know, we're definitely quite unrelaxed, as you're saying. And also, I think one of the things is that's come out from, you know, teens that I've spoken to, it could well be that the situation, even if in the UK at the moment it's sort of almost at a bit of a slight lull, so no one really quite knows what's happening. I know it's very different for you, Deborah, in Israel, but besides for that, you know, many people are dealing with other things that they would have had to deal with before this whole issue and war came along, and there's the stress of exams and maybe some difficult friendships. For a lot of teens, this is just like now something they could really have done without, and struggling to deal with, feeling quite overwhelmed.
Well, that's absolutely right. And I think that even though the thoughts and the anxieties that we may be feeling might not necessarily be directed about the situation in Israel, there's our normal life. And also there is definitely a connection associated because, you know, should we be doing more? Should I be watching and reading things because then I'm connected? I feel guilty because I'm not there. Should I be here? Should I go there? There's a lot of things. Have I prayed enough? Or, you know, should I start praying if I don't pray? There is a whole there is a real challenge with associated, what should I be doing in my life? I can't just be normal. I can't just be functioning while this is happening. So yes, while it's not directly affecting and we are in this lull, we feel it too here in Israel because everything's different, but it seems the same. But our lives need to go on, and these feelings of guilt and what should I be doing and have I done enough? And, you know, my friends, what was very interesting, the first webinar we did, how some questions that we received were about social challenges. You know, some of my non-Jewish friends haven't even mentioned what's going on. That's still the case in a number of situations. So I think even though there is the lull, it's all interconnected. And it is, exactly as you said, something that we could have all done without because it's hard enough as it is. And it's difficult.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And just the fact that we able to speak about it and to be okay that we're not feeling okay, and not to feel, annoyed why we're not handling it so well, is really important. We've got quite a few questions here, Deborah, so let's try and work through some of them quite quickly. We've got an interesting question because I know that it's come up. I found it with some of my colleagues who might be non-Jewish. What do we do if non-Jewish teachers? This is one person's messaging in about a non-Jewish teacher that speaks about it. I'm not sure exactly what bothers them. I know that what bothers me when non-Jewish people speak about it is they don't really get it. They might be more curious and just sort of, but it's a lack of sensitivity. They don't know what it's like to walk, down the street and to feel a bit unsafe. It's more like a news story for them. Or perhaps, some non-Jewish people are really actually being quite disparaging and a bit insulting about what's going on. How do we deal when people talk about it and they're not really coming from our standpoint?
Well, I think this is a very interesting question, and it's covering not just what happens in a classroom with a teacher. It's happening in social circles outside of school. It's happening when we see things on the news and we see these pro-Palestinian protests walking through London. It's right across the board. What do we actually do? We have to remember that the non-Jewish population, and even the Jewish population, we see it, that the news is often biased. This is the information that people are being fed. This is the information that people know. So in a situation, if a non-Jewish teacher is talking about it and you feel as you're listening that perhaps it's not as balanced as it feels it should be, then you can take a moment to speak to that teacher privately afterwards and say, can I please explain? Or you can put your hand up in the middle of the class and say, can I give another point of view? But we don't all need to be what's been termed keyboard warriors. Okay, if we don't stand up or we don't fight against it in an angry way, it doesn't mean that we're not connected to the situation. It's not an easy dynamic to navigate. Okay, so we can either provide more information in a calm and respectful way. If we disagree with what the teacher says, then we can say, actually, this is not my experience and this is what's going on, and I have family or a connection or whatever it may be to Israel, so this is quite difficult for me. And to be honest with you, Yaakov, I do believe that if there's a situation where this is uncomfortable and really not appropriate and things are being said that are not okay or too biased, it doesn't matter what age anybody is, it's perfectly okay to either go to the head teacher or go home and speak to your parents about it and ask them to get involved, because this is a battle that we are all fighting together, and it can be quite a lonely one if you're in a classroom and you have a non-Jewish teacher talking about the situation that directly affects you, but perhaps not many other people in the class. This can be very isolating. So it's important to remember that you're not alone if you hear something that you don't like. Does that sound does that ring true for you, Yaakov, as well?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think it's always a tricky one. Do you end up discussing it and having a whole debate? Because to be honest, I'm not sure if most people, probably because of the media that they're getting, somebody who most people are not really open to actually trying to understand another person's viewpoint. Once they've already decided Israel's wrong and we are, and is it really worth getting upset by getting into a whole debate?
100%. And I think also there was an interesting question that sort of ties in quite interestingly about somebody suggesting that actually this is going further for them than what's being said by a non-Jewish teacher, but that there are people in school that are giving dirty looks and not saying anything, but there's a sort of isolated feeling, because of what's going on in the Middle East. And what should that person do if if this progresses. And I think certainly nobody ever needs to be exposed to that kind of behavior. Okay. Number one, that can be immediately discussed with a member of staff, or your parents to also support that your discussion with a member of staff.
Yeah.
Second of all, you can also turn around and say, rather than giving me a dirty look, is there something you would like to ask? And often that's enough to break the ice, where somebody will say, well, I've seen things on the news, or yes, I've also seen things on the news, but we're supposed to be friends, or I know you and you know me, and let's talk about it in a reasonable way. But that obviously depends on person to person.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so here we've got what's happening in the UK and other parts of Europe, but certainly in London seems to be the biggest. Is last week there was a big protest in London, and many thousands of Palestinian supporters were there. It makes everyone, I mean, we have an 8-year-old girl saying that she feels uncomfortable, but I must tell you, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're 8, 28, 48 or older. I think it kind of makes everyone feel a bit uncomfortable, not more than probably uncomfortable, also feel quite intimidated, unsettled, worried. But there's not much we can do about it, Deborah. How do we deal with the protests, which are not really in our face? They're not right here, but we know that there's a lot of people who are really not very sympathetic, to say the least.
This is a really challenging question coming from somebody who is 8, because it's difficult. Because also at the age of 8, it's probably, I'm assuming, coming up to being one of the first instances in your life where you have been exposed to this kind of anti-Israel protests, anti-Semitism, and that's very, very tough. And unfortunately, this is something that we normally learn as we get a little older and we go through school and we start learning about the Holocaust on Holocaust Day, and it's difficult. So to be exposed to that kind of protest at this age, I just want to reach out and give you a hug, because
you can do that anyway, Deborah, but I made a mistake. She's in year 8.
Oh, you're year 8. Okay, sorry. Okay, so I'll
It's
give you a hug anyway. You know,
I think she definitely will still deserve one.
yeah,
And
year 8,
also,
sorry. Yeah.
but either way, it still probably is one of the first times that you will, you know, that we will have faced, you know, any things like this.
I think it's very scary, and it is the first time. You know, when I saw the pictures myself of these protests and you know the chanting, and you think, whoa. But I also felt extremely strengthened by seeing the beautiful rally, I may say, rather than protest, about for Israel. And you can see that that was not the entire Jewish community in the UK at all. These protests, this is not the entire communities. There are many, many Arab nations, people in the Islamic communities that like Jewish people, and they don't hate the Jewish people, and they're embarrassed by what's happened. So again, I think that concept, Yaakov, that it's not right here. It's not literally on our doorstep in our street. It's something that's taking place slightly away from us, and it doesn't mean that everybody feels that way about us. I think those perspectives are comforting, but also at the same time, not to pay too much attention to it, even though it's not an easy thing to do.
And that, yeah, and it's as we've said, you know, it's not easy, because what we kind of feel that everyone's looking at us and this, and what people might just be walking down the street, but we perceive it as they're staring at us, they're thinking things, maybe they want to, you know, hurt us or something. We automatically view what might not necessarily be anything, you know, horrible or anti-Semitic, but we kind of in that mode where we're very suspicious at the moment.
100%, and that makes sense. It really, really does. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's very scary to see. It's very scary to hear. But don't focus on it too much, because it's just let's make a loud noise and see what we can do. The Israeli army, the Jewish nation, we're not who we were before the Holocaust. We have our own nation, we have our own state, we have our own army. Things are very, very different. If we look over the course of history in the last 70 years, we see some of the things that Israel has done to protect its own. It's pretty amazing. So we're in a different position. So let them shout.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it kind of also they, when they are shouting at us, for me recently, I've been thinking, after some of the stories, there's so much to be proud of what we are doing, and a lot of the shouting is because I think deep down they realize how special the Jewish nation is and how unbreakable we are. Okay. One person has got an old-fashioned Nokia phone. Is that a problem? Well, it's not a problem in certain ways because you're obviously not exposed to any graphic videos, so that's great. But ultimately, if you're using the phone to keep either texting or speaking to people about it, and that means that you're not able to just distance yourself a little bit from it, then it could be. So it really depends what you do with the phone as to whether it is damaging or not. But it definitely is good that certainly on the phone, you're not going to be able to see some of these really horrific videos that some people have seen. What about? Yeah, sorry, Deborah.
No, I think it's also important to add, even if it's not a smartphone, as in, a bigger screen, the Nokia screens, even the most up-to-date ones, aren't huge. So again, you're looking at a very small screen, reading off a very small screen, and that's not overly healthy late at night either. It's bad for your eyes, it's tiring, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it.
Okay, so we're going to try. I mean, many people have tried to just reduce the amount of screen time, not necessarily just to fall asleep, but just to be able to start living. We said last week, it's so important to be able to just have a bit of normality, just talk about other things. It's not insensitive, and because it's just the way we're going to manage, and you'll have to do it in Israel, which is going to be even harder, Deborah, to do it. But we do have to talk about some of the old things that now seem a little bit unimportant. But, a friend of mine told me that he went to a barbecue the other night. And he felt quite guilty afterwards that he had, he was having a nice time with the family member or something in the barbecue. And he felt like, people in Israel are struggling. They're going to bomb shelters and he's just having a nice barbecue. And we definitely understand why he might feel like that. But ultimately, should he be feeling like that, Deborah?
No, I think it's okay for him to go to a barbecue in the same way that if it's your birthday, it should be celebrated. In the same way this evening, I went to a wedding. I will say that the place where I went to the wedding was in a hotel where there are a number of families staying from the south. So when I was coming in and out to go to the car, I wished who I saw well, but I felt that sense of guilt. I felt it. I know exactly what that feels like, but Baruch Hashem, there was a wedding, and it's also important to celebrate, and exactly that. Go to a barbecue, spend some time with friends. As you say, take a headspace from what you're talking about. It's okay to sit and laugh at jokes and have some good times because it's good for your emotional state, releases serotonin in your brain, makes you feel happier. And it's hard enough. We don't need to keep ourselves in the dumps in order to feel connected to the situation.
It's hard for some people, especially those people that are already feeling a bit scared and worried, and they really just want to be able to go to school and not really talk about it or think about it. But it is everywhere. Everyone is talking about it. So we've got this lovely teen from London, who I'm assuming is a lovely teen because all the teens that are on here are. And this is a person who the teacher said that she won't teach anything scary, but she is still showing them someone who was lying on the floor that was not meant to be scary, but she found it quite scary, and then she also taught us very scary facts. You know, some people just want to have really just to have completely nothing of the whole situation for a while, but you can't really escape it. What can you do if, let's say, your friends are talking about it? You don't want to keep saying stop talking. You don't want to leave the friendship group. What are you meant to do?
Well, Yaakov, it's okay in that instance if you want to get up and go and chat to somebody else, or go and get a drink, or go slightly in a different place to avoid that conversation. We have to be very mindful because, like we discussed, you know, people react to these situations in different ways. It's not that we all feel anxious in exactly the same way. We don't. Some people are keyboard warriors, as I've discussed. They want to see everything, they want to post everything, they want to send everything. Other people want to listen and hear and read as much as they can to have as much information as they feel that they need. And others will want to avoid it at all costs. No way is particularly bad as long as it's fit and it feels right for that person. So if you're in a situation where people are speaking and chatting and you really don't want to hear it, we can't say to other people who are information gatherers and keyboard warriors, please don't discuss it, because why? We should be discussing it. This is what it's important. We're not in the business of lecturing people or trying to get people to do what we want, but we can make the choice to get up and walk away, or guys, I'm just going to the bathroom, I'll be back in a minute, and take some time. In a classroom situation, this is quite challenging. And I think that there are two things that can happen. That in the instance where the teacher is speaking, it's okay to put up your hand and say, is it okay if I just take a bathroom break? I'm finding this conversation a little challenging. This is also okay to, at the end of the lesson, to say to the teacher that, is it possible that I cannot be and not participate in those discussions at the moment, not because I don't care, but because it makes me anxious. And again, as I said before, Yaakov, especially when dealing with schools, there is nothing wrong with enlisting the support of your parents to have a chat with a member of staff, because I think that if and obviously I'm going based on what I have read here, but if this situation is exactly as been described, which obviously I'm complete trusting that it is, then what was presented in the class may not have been overly appropriate. As a result, you know, it's okay to seek your parents' help in speaking to the teacher privately and saying, during these situations, it's best that my daughter or my son is not involved in those discussions. There is nothing wrong with it. If my child came home and told me the same things, I would have that conversation straight away.
Yeah, well, I think it's an ongoing challenge, and we just have to hope that you know, over time, please God, things calm down and we're able to go off. This story is not on the headlines. I think it's a nice time. I would like to. We do some random things every so often in these webinars. I would like to read out something. It's an excerpt from Winnie the Pooh. And one of the colleagues from JTeen, Ari, sent it to me. And it's very powerful because I think it hits on a really important point that many of you have mentioned on here tonight. And that's this sort of the feelings that we're feeling. Piglet, said Pooh. Yes, said Piglet. I'm scared, said Pooh. For a moment, there was silence. Would you like to talk about it? Asked Piglet, when Pooh didn't appear to be saying anything further. I'm just so scared, blurted out Pooh. So anxious because I don't like things when they're not getting better. If anything, I feel like things might be getting worse. People are angry because they're so scared and they're turning on one another, and there seems to be no clear plan out of here. And I worry about my friends and the people I love, and I wish so much that I could give them all a hug. Piglet, I'm so scared. I cannot tell you how much I wish it wasn't so. Piglet was thoughtful. As he looked out at the blue of the skies, peeping between the branches of the trees in the 100-acre wood, and listened to his friend. I'm here, he said simply. I hear you, Pooh. I'm here. For a moment, Pooh was perplexed. But aren't you going to tell me not to be so silly, that I should not stop getting into a state and pull myself together, that it's hard for everyone right now? No, said Piglet quite decisively. No, I am very much not going to do any of those things. But, said Pooh, I can't change the world right now, continued Piglet. And I'm not going to patronize you with platitudes about how everything will be okay, because I don't know for sure that's going to be. What I can do, though, Pooh, is that I can make sure that you know that I am here, and that I will always be here to listen and to support you, and for you to know that you are heard. I can't make those anxious feelings go away, not really. But I can promise you that all the time that I have breath left in my body, you won't ever need to feel those anxious feelings alone. And it was a strange thing, because even as Piglet said that, Pooh could feel some of those anxious feelings start to loosen their grip on him, and could feel one or two of them start to slither away into the forest, cowed by his friend who sat there stolidly next to him. Pooh thought he had never been more grateful to have Piglet in his life. Isn't that just a lovely little excerpt that really just shows, in a way, that we may not always have the answers, and we don't know what's going to be. And it's a situation right now. I think we said this the same last week and the week before, and it is like that. We don't really know what's happening. Everything seems to be very much on a sort of knife edge, and what's going to be next week. And we're going to go into Shabbat and again, not really know. But what we do know is that we have our loved ones, we have our friends, we have the people we trust, and those could be parents, those could be mentors, they could be teachers, they could be older family members, siblings. It doesn't matter who they are. And it's at times like this that we have to be able to reach out, and we have to be able to talk and discuss what's bothering us, not necessarily because they're going to say everything is going to be okay, but because they can say, I'm here for you. You're not alone. And it's one of the things that I know that Deborah and I, we try to do this webinar for that very reason, to show and to everyone should feel that we are not alone.
Absolutely. And Yaakov, we were saying before, when we thought that the young lady who wrote was 8, you said it doesn't matter what age you are. That was an unsettling thing for me. I feel unsettled, and it's difficult to be unsettled, and we have to understand that throughout life there are always going to be moments where we're going to feel unsettled. This is a particularly challenging version. We also feel vulnerable, and that's very, very difficult. But if we try to fight those feelings, it makes it very difficult to manage them. But if we just accept exactly where we are, and we know, and we look for that solace within the people around us, exactly like you said, it can make it much more easier to manage. I thought that was really beautiful. Thank you for reading.
And it's hard always to sometimes share and to tell people, because sometimes we think we're kind of maybe the only ones who may be feeling like it, and other people might say, oh, come on, what you're getting so worked up about. But it's really important that we take that risk a little bit, and we willing to say, I'm going to reach out, I'm going to share what's bothering me, just so that I can just have someone else who can, listen to my worries and listen to my feelings.
That's right. Absolutely.
Here we have another Gibraltarian representative. What do we do every time I see a stranger looking at me on the street, and mainly if they are Moroccan or Arab looking? I start overthinking it, and I start getting anxious. What should I do?
Well, that makes perfect sense. It does. There's no denying it. It doesn't matter where we are in the world, we're doing it.
And we do have to be a bit safer now.
100%. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it, because we don't want to be oblivious to it. Exactly as you said, we need to be more aware. So it's okay, and it's perfectly natural, but never walk in the street in a sort of meek and worried way. That's very, very important. Okay, so stand tall, put your head up, and keep walking. Even if you feel anxious, keep walking. If you feel or sense anything untoward, You go into the nearest shop, you can knock on somebody's house, or you call somebody straight away, and you can take those steps if you feel that it's a little bit more. But that's unfortunately something that we are all feeling. And that's a sign of the times for now. It's difficult. So there's not anything about that that doesn't make perfect sense, but just to be aware that it's normal, breathe through it and put your head up high and keep walking. Do not have any physical stance that reflects you being scared or anxious. And if you do see anything that's really you're not overly happy with, you take one of those 3 steps that I suggested. That's how I would respond to that.
Okay, great. We have a 12-year-old from London that keeps getting these sort of nervous attacks, maybe anxiety attacks. We don't really know what happens in these nervous attacks that she describes. How can she manage these attacks when they come?
Well, it's very interesting because we often see a displacement in anxiety, so that we see we may be in a normal situation, we may be in a shop down the road buying ice creams, we may be, just something random, and suddenly we start to have these nervous attacks. So it's important to remember that it's not unusual for them to happen at times where it doesn't seem to make sense, but they're sort of displaced because they're very much connected to the feelings that you're having right now. The key to understanding nervous attacks like this, anxiety attacks, is to understand that you are feeling overwhelmed, that there's too many thoughts in your head. It's getting bigger and bigger. What if? And then all of a sudden your body's got to release that, like, so we feel very, very overwhelmed. Okay. So what we can do in that minute, and we've obviously discussed this before, Yaakov, is take some steps to stop what you're doing and take a very, very deep breath in and breathe out like you're blowing out of a straw. And Yaakov will do his brilliant breathing exercises.
Well, we can literally do it as, it's so simple. It's literally.
Go on, Yaakov, talk us through it.
You're going to talk, and I'm just going to demonstrate. I'm not even going to talk. I'm just going to show how it looks. You carry on, and as you're saying it, I'm sitting back here, and I'm just slowly
breathing in through the nose and hold it for a few seconds, and then breathe out very slowly, but through your mouth as if you're breathing out of a straw, so that you're sort of blowing out a candle, and all the way down until all your breath has left your lungs. Just pause a little second and then do exactly the same thing. Deep breath in all the way up, fill your lungs up, pause for a few seconds and blow out. There's also another excellent technique, Yaakov, which I often do when I'm feeling quite anxious. There is a full body version that we won't do right now, but there is a smaller version which we can do simply with our arms and our hands. Okay, so if I'm sitting here and I'm speaking to you, you are not able to be aware of the fact that I'm actually doing the relaxation technique right now, because it's something that I can do under the table if I'm in a classroom setting, or if I'm in a shop that nobody else needs to see what it is. So when we are overstressed, one of the ways we can relax ourselves is by overstimulating our muscles. And when we do that, it actually sends a message to the brain that says, the threat is past, and it forces us into a relaxation. This is actually one of my favorite techniques alongside the breathing. So I'm going to show you what I do with my hands whilst we're doing that breathing in. So as you breathe in, I want you to, if I tell you what, if you can do the breathe in, Yaakov, and I can do the hand movement, because I can't do both. I can't speak and describe it. As you breathe in deeply, I want you to take your hands and squeeze them. You can see my knuckles are white. I am squeezing really, really tight, holding it. And as I release my breath, I want you to see what I'm doing with my fingers. I am literally unfurling uncurling, and you can feel the pull on your fingertips as you unfurl them. Okay, and then you take a deep breath in again. And as you do it again, you squeeze your knuckles tight, tight, tight as you're breathing in and you're holding your breath. And as you start to breathe out, you start to release, and very slowly, in the way that I'm doing it, uncurl your fingers and feel that resistance in your joints as you do it. When we do that, you know, already just by doing that, my hands are already feeling somewhat relaxed. Okay, it's a very, very interesting technique. And we can do this with we can sit and squeeze our shoulders together in exactly the same way, in the way that I'm doing now, breathing in and out and release, and doing it twice for whichever part we are squeezing. And once you let go, it's very, very relaxing. This is also very good for helping to go to sleep. So if you're in bed and you want to do this, it will help you relax your body as well.
Okay, amazing, Deborah. That was really nice. I'm feeling a lot calmer now. Thank you. Also, just to add on to the person who was getting the anxiety attacks, let's try to remember, like we said with sleep last week, when they do come, we can do the nice relaxation exercises that Deborah said. Sometimes it comes on a bit too quickly. You might not be able to stop them. And at that point, rather than trying to get rid of the anxiety attacks, it's more about using maybe the breathing or just trying to distract yourself, but allowing them to just go when they're ready to go. Because if we fight them and we get annoyed or we get bothered, then that can just make it worse. And that is a similar advice that I want to tell our 19-year-old girl who's messaged us. And this is probably going to be our last question for tonight. But this is a really powerful question. We've got our 19-year-old from Manchester, and Manchester's my hometown, so we definitely have to deal with this. So it says, thank you for JTeen. This really helps me. This is the third day on the run that I'm feeling extremely unmotivated. I can't be bothered anymore for anything. I just want to sleep and sleep. I can't be bothered getting up in the morning. It takes too much energy to face life. I have no will to daven or to face people. I just feel a gaping, empty void inside me, so detached and disconnected from myself, Hashem, parents, people around me, life and happiness. How can I help myself? And I think the question itself is really powerful, because I can see that you really know yourself in this question. You've really identified what's bothering you. But I think without getting depressed about this question, because there's no doubt about it, you're definitely, you are struggling. But let's remember, this is the third day in the run. Okay, we're talking about 3 days. We're not talking about 3 weeks or 3 months. I think the first thing to say, and I'm sure Deborah will add on to what I'm saying, but the first thing is, let's not panic about the fact that for 3 days you haven't felt so good. It would make sense. I don't know from your question if this is to do with the situation going on in Israel, or there's other things bothering you. This has happened before, but for 3 days, if you're on a downer, you're not feeling great, you're just feeling unmotivated, not energized, it's okay. It's not, you don't need to now start panicking, oh my gosh, there's something seriously wrong with me. Because if we do that, then you're likely now to feel anxiety plus feeling down. What's that going to do to your feelings and motivation? So I think the first thing to say is, it's a great question. I'm happy that you've noticed that something's bothering you, but at the same time, let's not get too worked up. And maybe Deborah's going to give us 1 or 2 just ideas that maybe we can help with our 19-year-old just to maybe get back to where she was.
Absolutely. I agree completely with what you said, Yaakov. And let's add to that some very, very small practical tools to use tomorrow morning. Okay. First of all, when we're looking at, right, that's it, I'm unmotivated, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do this, it's unattainable. When we don't have motivation, or we're feeling a little bit low, it may be a hormonal imbalance that's happening at a certain time. There's a million reasons why suddenly, bang, we can feel really extremely unmotivated, especially with what's happening, okay? But it doesn't mean that we have to pile everything up. I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do this, okay? It's difficult. No one is saying that it isn't, and it's okay that you're going through a period of time that's making you feel unmotivated. What we don't want to do is try and take that stretch and think, look, I can't even do this, I can't do that, I can't do the other. It makes it so unmanageable just thinking about it like that, okay? Tomorrow morning, when you're ready, just do one thing, which is get up and make your bed. Even if you get back in it 10 minutes later, get up and make your bed, okay? There is a small step towards that. Sometimes when I work with patients that are describing exactly what you've said, for the first week, that's all they have to do. Get up, make their bed. Sorry, I will add one more thing. And they take a photograph of their bed made and send it to me on WhatsApp. Okay? That sense of achievement that you will get from just getting up and making the bed. If you've got 5 cups of old coffee or tea next to your bed and tissues lying around, just decide, you know what, at 10 o'clock, I'm going to get up, take my cups to the sink in the kitchen, and I'm going to put the tissues in the bin. Let's keep it small and minimal, just like that, because taking those very small steps already remotivates us, because we realize it doesn't have to be all of this everywhere. It can just be today, I made my bed. It was great. I can tell you straight, it's Thursday afternoon. I usually like to try and do my cooking for Shabbos on Thursday afternoon. I didn't want to do it. I haven't done a thing. Not a thing. Busy day tomorrow. Okay. So I didn't do it. I sat and ate nosh and watched a movie this afternoon with my daughters who are home from school. So, okay. It doesn't matter. Don't make it into something big and oh my gosh. Think about what tiny, tiny things you can do, and they are just fine.
The little things.
That's right.
And allow yourself, be patient. And as you were saying, Deborah, the little things, be patient with yourself. Don't expect too much from yourself. And in time, emotions will take time. So you're not going to straight away maybe have the will to daven. You might not want to face people straight away. Allow them to come when they're ready to come. And if the 3 days comes into a week or 2 weeks, then you always know, first off, that JTeen is always here for you. I think we've put it in the chat, or we'll put our number there. JTeen is always there. Our counselors, our therapists are there for you if there's anything. And if you are concerned, that applies to everyone. If you are concerned, then you please reach out to a trusted adult, a parent, and to say, I am struggling, I need help. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. On the contrary, although we think it might be weak, it's actually, that is the strong way of doing it. It's weak just to be scared and to say, I'm not going to talk about what's bothering me. It's strong to stand up and say, this is affecting me, I need help, and then reach out to help. Great. Okay, everyone. We are drawing to a close. Thank you very much, Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous, for the thanks. We do appreciate it. What the plan is, and we'll see how it works. We've really enjoyed the feedback that we've got from so many of you from our webinars. What we would like to do, because we had feedback last week from a lot of you that would want to talk about some other things besides just the conflict going on in Israel. We plan to maybe have a monthly webinar where everyone can message in about any questions. That would be nice, because please God, the situation will be much easier, that it won't be headlines, and we're all looking, please God, it will not carry on being a headline news. But we will intend to have monthly webinars. You'll be able to ask questions on a range of things, from friendships to different types of feelings to stress and all sorts of things that might be bothering you. And we'll have some therapists, whether it's Deborah and myself or anyone else, but we'll try and be there for you. So please, if possible, fill out the questionnaire when you leave, because that gives us feedback in terms of how we're doing and what we can do more for you. And Deborah, just thank you so much. I know it was a big effort for you today.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really glad to be able to help.
Well, thank you so much. Wishing you all, everyone, Deborah, Shabbat Shalom, everyone here, a peaceful Shabbat.
Amen.
And we will see you very, very soon. Thank you so much, everyone.